Hello! This Deaf Awareness Week I wanted to make a video for anyone who's interested, but particularly animal professionals such as veterinary staff, behaviourists and trainers, especially those who are self-employed and may not have had any training in deaf awareness previously. So some people are profoundly deaf or hard of hearing from birth, and for many other people this can happen later in life. Don't assume that somebody who is wearing a hearing aid or a cochlear implant can hear you perfectly, and also don't assume that they can lip read, as they may just be starting to learn themselves and it can be a very difficult thing to do. It may also not be their preferred method of communication, so they may use British Sign Language, they may use sign-supported English or Makaton, for example. So be prepared to accommodate the use of an interpreter, and ensure that you talk directly to the person rather than to the interpreter. The same goes as well if you're talking to their animals, where you'd normally be, the person would be listening in to what you're saying to the animals, but as far as they're concerned, when you turn away, if they can't see your mouth, they don't know what you're saying and they might feel that they're missing something. So something else to remember is that if you do have a loop system in the workplace, ensure that all members of staff know how it works, and also make sure that they are actually switched on. You'd be surprised how many places have them and they're not actually working. Understanding the spoken word without sound is very tiring, and it takes a lot of concentration and energy. So if there's anything that we can do to make things easier and clearer, then we should obviously try and do that where possible. So there are things that we can all do to make our communication clearer. Things such as looking directly at the person when you're speaking. So look at them face on, they can see your face and your mouth very clearly and see your mouth movements. Also, if they do have some hearing, the sound will travel better if it's direct and not from a different direction. Make sure that you have their attention before you start talking, because if they're not looking at you either, that's not going to help. Try and maintain eye contact when speaking, and that's something for you to focus on to help you avoid turning away while you're talking. I'm turning away at the moment because I'm just checking that I've not missed any of my notes. When you are making notes with them, whether that's down looking at a notebook or turning to type on a computer, or as I said earlier, bending down to speak to their animals or examine their animals, as soon as you turn your face, if they're a lip reader, that conversation stops. So make sure that when you're talking, if you need to stop and do something, which is absolutely fine, that's part of your job, make sure that you stop the conversation, turn and do what you need to do, turn back to the person and carry on and explain what you're doing. The same goes as well if you are a vet and you have to turn the lights off to do an eye examination. When it's dark, they can't see your face, and if you're explaining what you're doing, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand. So if you do need to do something like that, tell them what you're about to do, turn the lights off, do the examination, turn the lights back on, and then explain what you've done. Try not to shout. This is rarely helpful. It can also make you appear aggressive if you're shouting. And try not to overly accentuate your words. So if you're talking like this, it makes your lip movements a lot more difficult to read. So use your regular lip patterns and your regular talking speed, just to make things as easy to understand as possible. Do you normally shout out names in a waiting area to call people in? Perhaps you might need to think about another way of getting people's attention. Try not to mumble. This is something my family tell me I do, so it's something I have to be more conscious of. And also waffling a lot. If you can, try and use plain English and at a normal speed. And also keep checking to make sure that the person has understood you. You can be more expressive with using facial expressions and with your body language. So, for example, is the animal in pain? Are they fearful of something? Are they happy? Are there areas that you need to point to illustrate what the problem is? Be patient and allow extra time to ensure the information has been provided and there's been enough time to answer questions. So if you have to allocate a longer appointment to allow for communication, then you should be doing that if you can. If they've not understood, think about repeating it, rephrasing it if the first way you tried to explain didn't make sense, or you can write it down. You can use diagrams or the written word to assist you, but do be mindful that this won't be helpful to everybody. Avoid saying things like, oh, it doesn't matter as well. If you've tried to repeat something, it can often make people feel like they don't matter if you've said something and they haven't got it and you've just brushed it off. So if you do say something, try as best as you can to get that across, or try in a different way. Something else to think about is the environment that you're in. Is the background behind you or the clothing that you're wearing distracting? So when they're having to concentrate on lip reading, are you wearing a brightly coloured outfit with lots of patterns on, or are you stood in front of lots of posters? Can you stand in front of a plainer background, for example, or do you have a top that you could wear that's in a plain colour, if you've got any scrubs out the back or something like that you could pop on? Something else to think about are windows. Are there windows where you're standing? Try to avoid standing directly in front of a window, because not only does the movement outside become quite distracting, but you also won't have the light on your face. Your face will be a lot darker and it won't be as clear for people to see. If you work outside as well, think about standing with the sun behind that person, because that will highlight your face, and also it will mean that they're not squinting. So if the sun is behind you and they've got the sun in their eyes and they're trying to focus on your mouth, it can be very difficult for them to focus. Obviously, this time we are often wearing face masks, so this is something that we need to think about with people, especially if you're working indoors. Safety measures obviously have to be taken into account, but there are things that you can buy, such as masks that have got a clear panel in the front, so it's still covering your face, but the panel is cut out. Try to avoid doing what I just did there and having your hands in front of your mouth while you're speaking, because that's also not very helpful. But you can look at things like this, so masks with the panels in the front. If you are able to take off your mask for any reason, then do so if it's safe to do so. And also think about asking that person in advance if there are things that you can do to make their experience easier and make communication easier for them. They might have a written list of questions to bring with them that you can jot down answers to. It might be that if you know they're coming for something in particular, you could send them some information beforehand to have a read to try and explain things, if reading is a suitable way to help them. So I hope this is useful. There are a number of excellent resources available, and I'll post some links to them below. I am by no means an expert in this, but I have worked with a number of people in the deaf community and I learnt a lot from that time, so I just wanted to try and share that. If I've said anything that anyone thinks there are better solutions, or if there's anything that I've missed, please do let me know and I'll be happy to add them on if I do this again. But yes, thank you very much for your time and I hope it's useful. Bye bye.